My name is Sherwood Wilson, and I am the Vice President for Operations at Virginia Tech. Why is the Vice President for Operations standing up here talking about a master plan and not our Chief Facilities Officer, who is right here, Dr. Chris Kiwas? And the reason for that is I've been in higher education since 1977. If you read the bio in the book, it said for 30 years, but if you do the math, it's really more like 42 years. And I've been involved in many master plans. Just for curiosity's sake, how many of you all have been involved, directly involved, in one or more master plans? That's good. How many university architects are in the room? That's also good. If you're an engineer, that's good, right? One of the things that we in higher education always struggle with is, what is a master plan? I mean, that's the salient question, correct? What is a master plan? Now, if you look up a definition, it would tell you that the master plan follows the university's strategic plan. And while that's true, optically, the fact is, a master plan is a tool for us, for operations, for you all. Regardless of how much effort you put into it, regardless of how much you try something else. That's been the history of master plans. It contains these primary large buckets of data that I won't go into, you can read them. For Virginia Tech, we assumed that our master plan was going to cost about $2 million to do. And initially, it would have included kind of these 4 functions. So if you look at this one right here, this driver, it talks about the strategic plan. And as I said earlier, optically, master plans have been directly related to the university's strategic plan, but operationally they haven't been. That's because we don't build the right relationships to be able to make the master plan into something beyond a tool for facilities folks. If you think about Virginia Tech, we're about 14 million square feet on 2,800 acres, contiguous acres, within the town of Blacksburg. We're a city of about 50, 60,000 on a daily basis, in a town of Blacksburg that, when our students are gone, is about 2,500 students. We've always taken the traditional master plan approach. Virginia Tech is nestled right between the Allegheny and the Blue Ridge Mountains in what's called the New River Valley. And so one of the greatest assets we have are our natural beauty. We've been able to create this terrific sense of place on our campus that honestly doesn't exist in a lot of places. We've typically followed the traditional master plan process. Every 10 years, we do an update. And the reality is Virginia Tech has done this really well. We have master plans, if you will, from the early 1901, 1902, that show the basic concept of Virginia Tech. And we have followed that traditional master plan through all these years, almost 150 years, because it works for us. Not all campuses are able to do that. Not all campuses have. About 6 years ago, the Saudi Arabian Minister of Higher Education invited me to Saudi Arabia to talk about the importance of a master plan and cite good examples and bad examples. And honestly, there are a lot of bad examples of master plans out there. And there are good ones too. The first slide, I said that a master plan typically has become a tool for facilities. The first components I showed you were kind of the traditional components in a master plan. Again, we estimated that was going to cost us about $2 million. In keeping with that idea, our Chief Facilities Officer and I and our university architect talked about what other tools do we need as an operations division to help manage the university. And so we added some additional things. Again, I won't take time to read all those. But these were These were the layers in the master plan that we believed were important for the overall good of the university, because that's our mission, is the overall good of the university. Our last master plan was concluding in 2016, which means that we would have begun planning for a new master plan in 2014. And so if you look at this flow chart, you'll see that we were scheduled to run our master plan for almost 2 years. Well, as things happen in higher education, we knew in 2013 that our then sitting university president, Charlie Steger, who, by the way, was the only architect university president in the United States at the time, great guy, but in 2013, he announced that he was going to retire. We had already set aside money for the traditional master plan, the $2 million. We internally, in my division, had to come up with the other $150 million that I showed you on the last slide for the enhanced layers in the master plan. But when we found out that the new president was coming, I thought it prudent to stop the master plan. Let's get a new president on board to see what his vision is for the university. And at that point in time, you can see the org chart. President reported to the board of visitors, and the vice presidents and the provost reported on the same line. So the provost was first among equals, we'd like to say. In the president's inaugural address, he made two salient points that I still vividly recall from his inauguration speech in 2014. One, he talked about this concept of a binary star, that Virginia Tech, while we're an ag school, we're in far southwest rural Virginia, we need a presence in the National Capital Region. In fact, we had a presence in the National Capital Region. We just needed to enhance that. So he put together a charge, and he talked about that in his inaugural speech. He wanted to do a thinking process called Beyond Boundaries that would take Virginia Tech beyond traditional boundaries all the way out to 2047. And there were guiding questions that needed to be answered as part of that evolution. What's higher education going to look like in 2047, which is our 175th anniversary? What kind of buildings are we going to need? How's education going to be delivered? Those are some of the kind of questions that were asked. That also coincidentally coincided with a significant drop in state support for our state universities. And so while our previous president had said, we're not growing any more undergraduate students, the new president saw our only hope of success was to increase our enrollment of both graduate and undergraduate students. So in addition to the Beyond Boundaries process, we put plans in place then to begin to grow the university. The master plan is still on hold because we haven't established what his vision is at this point. Out of the Beyond Boundaries exercise, again, that was to think about what's the university going to look like or need in 2047. Some pretty fundamental components came out of that, and I'm not going to take the time to read them because the clock is ticking here, 9 minutes and 37 seconds and so forth. You can read those, but the fact of the matter is, these four pieces create a fundamental shift in how we provide higher education in Blacksburg. They're game changers. They're disruptors, if you will. As the provost was trying to, as the provost was trying to bring the academic side of the house, the deans specifically, on board with this new idea of destination areas, of integrated learning spaces, tear down the silos of engineering and architecture and blend them across. He was getting a lot of pushback from the deans. And so I went to the provost. Our offices are right next door to one another. And I said, let us carry the weight in the master plan process for changing the culture of academics at Virginia Tech. And so the best thing of this whole process came out of that was an email from the provost, this very email, to all the deans saying, we're going to pause our master plan for 6 months while the university gets an opportunity to get its arms around the destination areas. And by destination areas, what that means is these are fundamental focus areas that the university is already very good at. And to develop those, we will be a destination for students and talent who want to be part of that process. On the right-hand side where the gears are, you'll see some of the primary functions that came out of the process that the provost is trying to initiate. But the important thing here is the provost saw this as an opportunity to create a physical manifestation of beyond boundaries, not just the university's strategic plan. There's a difference. There's a big difference between a strategic plan and the beyond boundaries visioning document. That's why our master plan is called Beyond Boundaries. Our master planning firm is Sasaki, who has done a phenomenal job. They also worked on our master plan update in 2006. And I say update because most all of you who raised your hands, I suspect, would say that virtually all of the master plans you've been involved in have been master plan updates. Take the old master plan from 10 years ago, and that's your starting point. That's where we were. That's where we were a year and a half into this process. Then the opportunity for partnership evolved. And this is something that our primary consultant from Sasaki wrote in one of the documents, that this plan that we're doing is more than an update. It's the first true rethink of the physical Virginia Tech campus. The quote says 30 years, but the reality is, in our history, it's the first rethink of our master plan in our history. This wasn't an update. This was a new start from scratch, certainly with what you have on board already, but the whole thought process was out of the box. It was beyond boundaries. So as part of that initiative, part of that delay, that 6-month delay in the master planning process, the deans, during that 6-month period, the deans were trying to come up with an agreement on what the destination areas were, what our presence in the national capital is going to look like, all of these questions around the fan here. These are what came back to us working with the provost at another $1.6 million increase in the master plan. So it's a $5.1 million total master plan as of right now. Some of you were saying, my God, what a waste of money. Some of you are saying we could never afford to do that. But the reality is Virginia Tech could not afford not to do this. If we wanted to change who we are, if we wanted to change the way we deliver higher education, if we wanted to tear down the silos and create cross-disciplinary programs where you don't build a building for engineering, you build a building for one of the terms we use as big sticky projects. so that they're solving problems of the world. That's the philosophy. And there was a lot of pushback, honestly. In fact, our provost, actually, after he proposed all these things, there was a lot of pushback from the university, as you can imagine. And he resigned about a year later. The new provost picked up exactly where we were and moved forward. So the original timeline, as I said, would have gone from 2014 to 2016. So we had a complete master plan at the 10-year cycle. You can follow this timeline out. Notice that in the very last arrow, the word beyond. One of the things a master plan has to be is flexible. It's not a blueprint. It's not concrete and mortar and steel. It's a concept. It's a plan that can help you get where you're going. If you tie it to the provost and the academic mission of the university in a direct way, not just optics, not just lip service, in a real way, if you connect the master plan to the academic mission and you partner with the provost, you can come up with truly a manifestation of what the philosophy of the university is moving to. And so, again, I won't go through these, but these are only 4 main components that really create the difference between a master plan that is a tool for our facilities folks and a master plan that's a tool for the academic, for the whole university. I say 2019 and beyond. You all have heard about Amazon's headquarters too, I assume, that Northern Virginia was selected as a site for that. And part of the package that brought Amazon to Virginia was a commitment that Virginia Tech would build $1 billion campus within sight of Amazon's new headquarters campus. So, we have had for many, many years principles that guide our design on campus. We've had for many, many years principles that drive our master planning process. But if we let those principles dictate how we move forward, we're doing a disservice to the university. Perfect example is this innovation campus that we're doing with Amazon. We have to be flexible. We can't be wed to the master plan just because it's our tool. Because we created it, we can't be wed to it. So, this was the topic this morning, right? It's how do you get a seat at the table? There were a lot of really great ideas that came up this morning. But the crux of it is you must do that if you're going to have an effective master plan that really becomes a university-wide tool, a physical manifestation of the university's direction forward from an academic standpoint. And I'm 7 seconds off. Thank you all.